I'm joined now by two people who have been watching this confirmation process. Democratic strategist Celinda Lake, who also serves as president of a polling firm, and Anneke E, formerly a speechwriter for George W. Bush. Well, let me start with you, Celinda. Do you think this is over for the Democrats, that in fact it looks like Mr. Kavanaugh is going to be confirmed?
I think they're certainly trending that way. There are still 4 to 5 senators who could play key pivotal roles who have not made up their mind. But this is far from over because we have a situation where what's looming, of course, in 30 days is the elections. And particularly what women voters do in those elections is still very much up for grabs.
Well, you mentioned the midterms, and Anneke, it is something that people feel, if Mr. Kavanaugh is confirmed, that it could swing in favour for the Democrats for these midterm elections. Is that something that concerns you?
That's something that people were really thinking for a while, but recent polling has been showing that the way that the Kavanaugh nomination has been handled, with it being dragged out, with him being subjected to greater scrutiny and more interviews, and in some ways some underhanded dealing, has actually mobilized the Republican side of things, and the poll numbers have really narrowed in a lot of key races.
Well, let me come back to this, Celinda. The process that has taken place, is it something that you think was open, transparent? Are you happy with the FBI report of the past week from what you're hearing from senators?
No, and the voters aren't happy either. The majority of voters now believe that excuse me, Brett Kavanaugh should not be confirmed. And their questions are certainly about his past and sexual harassment, but there are major, major questions about his integrity and his temperament. This is one of 9 people on the U.S. Supreme Court that litigates all of our laws for a lifetime appointment. And he lied on the stand about his drinking behavior and his conduct, and that is disqualifying to many voters.
Well, let me throw that back over to Anneke. He did himself, Mr. Kavanaugh, write an op-ed in today's Wall Street Journal saying that his temperament that he showed last Thursday perhaps was not fitting of a Supreme Court justice.
He said that he at times felt that he became more emotional than he would desire. When I was watching the hearing, which I watched every minute of it, it was a very long day, I was really looking to see what the truth was. I was wanting to hear from the woman who had accused him of misbehavior in high school, and I was wanting to hear his response to that. I worked with him in the White House, and I was very surprised to hear of the allegation, but I wanted to be fair about it. And what I saw when he testified was a man whose personal character was under attack, and that's what he was defending personally. I didn't see it as indicative of his demeanor on the bench, and I was reassured by his ABA, that's the American Bar Association, Lawyer Association rating, saying he has the top rating for demeanor on the bench. So I'm not concerned about his abilities when it comes to doing the job and being nonpartisan. But
the Lawyers Association last week did come out talking about their reservations when it came to the nomination of Brett Kavanaugh.
That was actually a different branch of the association. There's a distinction there, and the original rating from the ABA branch, which does assess these things, they have not withdrawn their rating of his demeanor on the bench.
But this is a big loss, Celinda, if in fact Mr. Kavanaugh is confirmed. It shifts the balance towards the Conservatives. What did the Democrats do wrong?
Well, I don't know that the Democrats did anything wrong. We're not in power. And I think that what this will do is feed the momentum that we need at least one branch of government to be a check and balance on Donald Trump. And Americans in general believe that not all the power should reside with any party. So I think this will provide momentum. The thing that I think is really interesting for the long term, though, is what you're going to see is the difference in voting behavior between men and women. We're going to have a gender gap in these elections that's probably twice the average gender gap. That is, women being like 20 points Democratic, with a record number of women candidates running. And I think these events will fuel their successes.
I'm also wondering, Anneke, with some of the points that Celinda is making there, that perhaps there will be a stain on his term if he in fact becomes a Supreme Court justice. We saw with Clarence Thomas how much that followed him and became really this game changer when it came to American history.
It definitely became a game changer, and we know that that has haunted the Thomases. Ginny Thomas in 2010 actually apparently left a voicemail for Anita Hill saying, "You owe my husband an apology." That's years after his confirmation. So I think that candidates, and if he's confirmed, if he becomes a justice, people do feel it personally when they've been through something like that. And I think that what happened to Brett Kavanaugh was much more intense than what happened to Clarence Thomas, particularly in the internet age. But ultimately, we will see. I mean, I don't have the same data that Celinda has about Republican voters, but as I've reached out to people, just to average women, independents, women who are in favor of Me Too, they do feel that this went too far and that there really wasn't a fair assessment of the credibility of his claims, at least in the media, and then in terms of how Democrats were treating him, particularly in terms of calling him evil before any of these allegations even came out, which set up the entire situation to be politicized.
So thanks to Anneke Green, that you're hearing there, and also Celinda Lake. And we will continue covering those confirmation hearings over the weekend here on BBC World News as well.